Bar Association of the residual mechanism, which undertakes the work of both the former Yugoslavian, the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. The ADC-ICT does advocacy lectures, a mock trial, a end-of-year conference, and many other activities, including online CLE videos. So you get discounts if you're a member, and oftentimes opportunities to network if you're a member. So if you watch the screen, you can click our website, www.adc-ict.org to become a member. Mr. Dominic Kennedy, head of office, you saw his email on the introductory video. We could show that again later. He'll be handling the questions today, and we hope to go through all this. By the way, my name is Dragan Ivetic. I am one of the members of the training committee of the ADC-ICT. We're, I think, blessed to have from the US joining us today 2 members of the membership committee of the ADC-ICT. And I'll leave for them to give backgrounds as to themselves. But Kurt Kearns and Van Hampton are joining us. So gentlemen, who wants to go first and give a quick bio to everyone as to who you are and how you got there?
I defer to Kurt.
How you doing? I'm Kurt Kearns. I wish we could still listen to that music. That was really good intro music for Friday afternoon. My bio is Van's my law partner. I've been mostly doing criminal defense for about 30 years now, both here and abroad. I met Dragan how many years ago? Seems like yesterday, but
yeah, at least 10, I think.
Yeah, took my first international case, I think, back in 2005, and had a few more since then. And I'm based out of Wichita, Kansas, Dodge City, with affiliate in The Hague. So I'm Kurt. Hope you have a good time and learn a lot today. That's all I have to say about that.
And Kurt, you also give CLEs and you're also a professor at the Spence Trial Lawyer Academy. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. When people ask, I'll go talk. And there's a nice called Trial Lawyers College out in Dubois, Wyoming, where we bring in about 50 lawyers every summer for about a month and teach them trial skills. So makes it a pretty summer in the Wyoming mountains every year. So Van, take over, buddy. Give an introduction.
Okay. Thank you, Kurt. I'm Van Hampton. I live in Dodge City, Kansas, and Kurt and I are partners out here, and kind of a outpost, more like a frontier. But I've been an attorney for 32 years. I was a district judge, a trial judge for 23 and a half years. And during that time, I got acquainted with Kurt, and basically the last 5 years of my term as a district judge, I was trying to figure out how to become a lawyer again, because I wanted to join up with Kurt, and then I got acquainted with Dragan. Our main venture was to introduce me to their work in Europe. So in 2018, we were able to travel over and visited The Hague, and then went down to Serbia, had a tour there, and it convinced me that's what I want to do. So I quit my term early and joined up with Kurt, and now we're defending people accused of crimes. I hope that I have something to add that will help some of you, but it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm honored to be associated with Kurt and Dragan and Dominic, and hope that we have something that's helpful to all of you.
Amen.
And if I forgot to mention, I've been an attorney for since 1999, both domestically and internationally, but for the last, I would say 16 or so years, I've been primarily focused with cases here before the international courts. I've been on multiple cases at the ICTY or the mechanism, I'm also on the ICC List Council and had a case for the State Court of Bosnia-Herzegovina. So today we're going to talk about 3 topics. We're going to have a question and answer at the end, but if you do have questions that arise, let us know about them and be patient, because I don't know how many people are going to join. At the end of the day, we had over 100 registered. I see we have around 30 participants now. So we'll try to answer every question. So I guess we'll start out with the CV or the resume, as it's called. And I'd like to cover some basics there before asking my colleagues for some comments. And I think people forget what the CV is for. It's supposed to be short. And I've done some research and some literature on this, and it says you need to remember that the CV does not have the purpose of trying to get the job for you. The purpose of a CV is to get the attention of someone to interview you and talk with you further about the opening that they have, and therefore become a candidate for that job opening. So in that sense, keep it simple, keep it short, put the most important information first on the CV, tailor each CV to a particular job you're applying for. So if you're applying for something that is law related, you don't necessarily need to have your non-law jobs there, but be ready to explain them, the gap in your CV in the interview. Make sure it's accurate and have someone proofread it. I don't know how many times I'll look at it and say it's fine, and then my assistant will look at it and say you've got a typo, or Kurt will say you've got a typo. It happens, It's also good to set up headings to basically structure your CV a bit, make it professional. We'll get back to this. Use a professional, consistent font of no smaller than 10 point. And a lot of places will even say 11 point, but I've done the research, and a lot of law schools say 11 or 10 point, that's it. So when I get a CV that's like tiny font, not good. Another thing that's good is bullet points. And the last thing that I would mention about, well, two things I'd like to mention about a CV before opening up for comments from Kurt and from Van. The length of the CV. Now, back in the old days, and you guys will probably remember this, for lawyers or law students, CVs are supposed to be short, and you were not allowed to even have like a 3-page CV unless you'd been in practice for a number of years to have, shall we say, enough positions to cover that up. And so there were strict limitations on, I think to have a CV of 5 pages, you needed to be in practice at least 10 or 15 years. And so nowadays, when I see CVs from students that are 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pages long, that's kind of contrary to the practice. Most experts will say that 2 pages is enough. If you go over 2 pages, the 3rd page probably is not going to be looked at. And that's another reason why you should structure your CV so that the most important information is up at the front end. Another thing is what's called white space. You don't want your CV to look so busy and full of information that it's like an encyclopedia page. And although it sounds kind of corny, it's referred to in all the literature I've looked up. It's called the squint test. And essentially, if you put your CV up on a wall or hold it in front of you like this, and stand a couple feet away from it, and if you squint your eyes, and if the CV looks comfortable to you in that position, then it's fine. But if it looks like it's got too many letters or too many words on it, then it's not fine, because you've got to have the right balance. Because I'll tell you, if you're looking at hundreds of CVs and you've got an active practice, you see a CV that's going to take you 2 hours to read, and you're not going to read it. And that's all I have to say on CVs. Kurt, Van, anything that you'd like to add, and what kind of things do you look for?
I think the CV is just getting in the door. I've never hired anybody based upon a CV alone. A CV is what we draft to get us in the door, to get us the meeting. And I guess my initial thing would be research who you're applying with, know what they do. do your background research so that you can tie your CV to exactly the kind of practice of law that they're doing. Because in the end, what's going to get you hired, in my mind, is the value you bring. So if your cover letter's focusing on what you can get, or how much you really want this, or how much you have really strived for that, the reality is I think most employers want to know what can they get from you. So if you can say, I can bring this value, I can bring this asset you don't have, I can fill this void that I've, have specific training in, and you emphasize what you can give the employer as opposed to what you can get, your odds of getting that interview are a lot higher. I'm gonna, it's kind of a fun. Also, you got to be relentless. The CV, I think what they want to know is how do they really get the job. CV is important. If you have typos, you're toast. If you don't know how to spell, you're toast. So you ought to proofread it. But in the end, it's about how do you get the job? Be relentless. I think I tried probably 10 murder trials and 20 federal jury trials. And I thought in my mind, I've done it all. I'm bored. Oh, there's a Hague-based criminal court. So I flew over there because people, we talk about CVs, but the chances of you getting hired based upon a CV alone are really, really low. It's about who do you know and what are you willing to do to get it. So I went with a friend of mine, I think in 2003, took all the Serbians and Croatian lawyers out to dinner and dined them and said, man, I really want to work here. And they go, yeah, that's great. See you later, not interested. So went back a second time, not interested. Went back a third time, not interested. Went back a fourth, fifth. But guess what happened on the sixth time I went to try to get a case in The Hague? Not interested. So about the seventh time, there was this Croatian lawyer named Jelko Par. And he said, are you just going to keep coming here until you get a case? And I said, yep. And he goes, well, my partner just quit. How would you like to work on the Vinko Martinovic case? And I said, I'm in, baby. So I think the CV is very important, but it's your attitude of how bad do you want it? Because that's what we all want, is we want go-getters. We don't want people that are just willing to sit back and take what life gives them, but they go out and they get from life what they feel they deserve and want. So that'd be my tip on CVs, is recognize this is just getting you in the door. So Ben, take over.
I say amen to Kurt. And so I will try to add to that. I think it's helpful in most cases if you can put a small headshot photo on your CV, just so people can see your face. Sometimes facial expression carries some of your personality with it. It's helpful, just so they know who to expect when they bring you in. The other thing is, I echo the sentiments about brevity, because brevity is important, that you don't lose someone in unnecessary details that are not going to be helpful in deciding whether to interview you. So I agree with Dragon that the 2 pages are enough in most cases, unless you're applying for a position that involves writing appellate briefs. You want to give examples of writing, but otherwise, brevity. The other thing is, make certain that the information you provide is relevant, because you may be called to describe it, and not only relevant, but you are able to discuss it. And finally, the purpose of the CV is to introduce you in an impressive way. So if you are applying to a criminal law firm, you want to say, if it is true, that you're interested. Your specific interest is defending persons accused of crimes, and you want to be involved in that. And you also want to express an interest to work for the firm that you're applying to. So you can say, I have a deep interest in working for this firm. So those are the things you want. You want to convey an interest and training that qualifies you, and something that stands out that will make you attractive to the person you're applying to. Those are basic rules.
Okay. Kurt, you mentioned researching, and Van, you mentioned a picture, and I would add to that, research the jurisdiction where you're applying as well, because there are some nuances in the international realm. For instance, France has a specific format that you have to follow, Switzerland as well, I think. And for those countries, you literally have to put your date of birth, marital status, the number of children that you have, along with a picture on the front of the cover page of the CV, or they won't even accept it. Whereas in the States, I think some of that information would not be permissible or to be asked by an employer. Same thing with Switzerland. You're supposed to basically give like three almost like campaign slogans at the beginning, about how great you are, which unless you do the research and ask people, you won't know these things, and you'll wonder why your CV is not getting any interviews, and it might be because of something as simple as that. Now, both of you guys, what have you seen in CVs that you've appreciated, and what have you seen that has kind of turned you off or that you've not appreciated, that's been not helpful in terms of getting a feel for who you want to interview?
I'll take that because it's kind of funny. I actually got a CV that said, I volunteered in 2016 to work on the Donald Trump campaign. That's what happened. So you might want to stay away with, avoid politics. That might work well.
Avoid any type of politics.
Yeah, because I got to that and I thought he might have been a great lawyer. He might have just been a great asset. But the second I saw that, I'd go back to know your audience. Anybody that knows me probably knows I'm not a big fan of him. So I would say avoid the politics. If you volunteer for some campaign, great. Keep it to yourself until you find out that the person that you're interviewing with is on board that same team. That would be one. We're interested in your extracurricular activities, but maybe not so much your political extracurricular activities. The things I've been impressed with are vulnerability. When what I mean by vulnerability, that sounds like weakness, but in the end, it's really strength, because it's in a cover letter, a personal story about why you're into this, why you want to do what motivates you as a human being. We all put on our masks to appear tough and be badasses. Remove that mask a little bit and show us who you really are, both on the cover letter in the interview. I don't care. Some personal story that gives me an insight into your soul. You're going to get a much better shot, a stronger shot than somebody who's just mechanical. And I heard include a photograph. You could get criticized. Well, that's sexist. What does that matter? Whether I'm a man or a woman or big or small, what race am I? I get it. It's also kind of some people may criticize that request, but the other side to that coin is if you're going to do it, a lot of employers want to know who they're dealing with. I would say smile, because I don't want to see a mugshot. I don't want to see a frown. We like people that are like us or remind us of who we want to be. That whole opposites attract thing it's never worked in my mind. It's so to the extent you can be outgoing, friendly, vulnerable, I would say do that. Take a risk, because your odds go up, in my mind, a lot higher when you do that.
That addresses one of the questions we had of whether a photograph on the CV would give an opportunity to discriminate based upon appearance. I think, Kurt, you've handled that. Van, go ahead. What are some things that you've seen that were kind of good examples or examples that you thought were not quite as helpful?
I'll start with the not quite as helpful. For a while, it was a trend for persons to put in their objective statement baloney that doesn't mean anything. And I'll give you an example. To collaborate, an objective, to collaborate with an outstanding company that would utilize thought-provoking ways in order to achieve the common goal of extraordinary experiences for all individuals. What does that mean? It's just ridiculous. But just leave stuff like that off. I agree with Kurt. to be honest and vulnerable, but include enough that someone could know a little bit about you and what your interests and your abilities are. So that just to be honest and not try to throw in something that is obvious BS. So
to both of you, to what extent should a CV focus or list achievements? You know, a lot of times people straight out of law school haven't had much experience in actual jobs, so they've got experiences like moot courts or seminars and stuff like that. And I sometimes see like a whole page of achievements without any kind of actual work experience. So what are your thoughts on that? How much should a CV focus on achievements? I personally think that if you do have achievements, they should be the last part of the CV to resume.
I want to see them because it tells me how big of a go-getter I'm dealing with. If it's silent, and I also think it probably depends on the age of the person applying too. But something that I want to see is how many goals have you set and how many goals have you met? And set a whole lot of goals and not met any of them. So I think it's important. I don't know about where on the resume I would put it, but it's definitely something that I want to know. Now, I don't need to know if you won your dog show contest when you were in 6th grade, but things that are relevant to what you're doing, moot court competition, and you won, absolutely, I want to know that. Anything law related, I want to know about that, or even any personal growth, I would want to know about. I want to know about whether somebody's got a sense of consciousness or whether they're just kind of a robot trying to get a paycheck. So I would say put them in and err on the side of, in my mind, the more the better. And you have to balance it with, you don't want to sound too cocky, but I almost don't want to say that, because the reality is you got to set yourself apart. And if you've got 30 different achievements that are all impressive, I want to know about them.
I can echo that.
Yeah.
I would also add that the lengthier CVs that include all training seminars that you've attended, it's interesting, but maybe not very helpful. If you include some that you believe changed your practice or changed your life, I would include those because you want to talk about them. But otherwise, they're not that helpful. But something that's brief, honest, and reveals who you are and what your training and skills are is helpful.
Okay, we have another question. When it comes to talking about prior employment or experience, how much detail is necessary to describe the position that you had? Is it enough just to list the position and the firm, or do you have to actually say what you did at that position?
Briefly. Yeah, I mean, I worked at so-and-so law firm from this date to that date. Doesn't tell me much. I don't need a lot, but I would like to see a sentence of what was your focus when you were in that. I was primarily responsible for drafting legal briefs relating to international law. I was primarily responsible for doing runs for the senior partner. There's a big difference there. So yeah, I think one sentence, not anything in depth, but just give me a brief insight into what actually you did during those times is going to be really helpful.
The focus of your work. Encapsulate what it was that you focused on. It is helpful because, for example, when I practiced law before I became a judge, it was a fairly general practice, but my focus was defending persons accused of crimes and domestic relations. So I put that in there. That's what I did. Now my focus is defending persons accused of crimes.
Yeah, I know I always used to put down, I think I still do, stressing the fact that my practice when I was, before I was an international lawyer, was primarily in court, that I was not just a transactional attorney, that was part of my work, but that I was a litigator, that I was appearing in court every day on various matters. And I think that will set you apart from someone who spent 5 years at a big corporate firm, but never stepped in front of a judge before. So those are the kind of things that I think would help. Let's move the discussion on to the cover letter that usually accompanies the CV. Now, well, Van, we touched a little bit about cover letters. Kurt talked about it. I would stress, again, you should personalize the cover letter to the organization or the entity that you're applying to. Make sure that that there's no grammar or misspelling mistakes. I know back when I was looking for interns, I had a specific legal assistant from the UK who was a stickler on all the grammar rules. And I did not even get to see a CV or a cover letter if there was a grammatical error, even a comma splice. That was just not even presented to me. And that's how we would, dwindle down 50 CVs to 5 or 6 that we could actually interview. Van, anything you want to say on that topic?
Well, just one idea, Dragon, and Kurt, I think probably would agree. When you're applying for a position with a CV, in most cases, you're not applying to be a partner in a firm. You're applying to be an associate, someone that they're going to use. And so it's important to convey your work ethic in your cover letter. And again, it can be brief, but what you're saying is, I'm willing to do whatever is necessary to fulfill my duties. I will work as hard as I'm required to work. I'll do whatever I'm instructed to do because I believe if you give me the opportunity, then I owe you my best effort. Something like that, so that they know I'm getting somebody who will work as hard as I will and that I can rely on. I think that's important to convey that in some way.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's the place, if you can put in some kind of personal story about what inspired you, not, a cover letter, I get it, it's got to be short, probably no longer than a page. But you know what? I attended Jerry Spence's Trial Lawyers College for a summer, and it changed my life, and it really made me want to become a litigator. It doesn't take a lot of space, but it gives us an insight into who you are and what you've done and why you want to do what you do. I can remember a kid that applied for a summer internship, and he said, I've done, I looked at the website, I did the research, and you know what? What did he say? How did he put it? He basically said, I'll work for you for free. Now, I'm not saying you need to do that, but what it told me was how hungry this kid was. He said, you know what? You don't even have to pay me the first few weeks. If you don't like my work product, I'll just shake your hand and go. So, I hired that kid because, and I paid him from the very beginning, but it showed me how hungry he was. It showed me that he was willing to sacrifice and bleed a little bit to get in the door. So I'm not saying you can offer to work for free, but I'm saying that was one way he stood out.
I think a key is that the cover letter should not just repeat what's already in your CV. You should save something, like you said, a personal story of what motivates you to apply for this position. So, you've got the CV that's got the bullet points that save space and are clear. And then you've got the cover letter that gives you the chance to go into depth to explain some experience that really invigorated you to apply for this position and therefore set you apart from anyone else. Now, Kurt, do you sometimes, would you give any advice as to people writing a letter? How do you put yourself in the shoes of the person reading the letter? How are you going to know what the person reading the letter is going to be looking for or what's going to impress them?
Well, Dragon is subtly referring to some of the teachings that we teach out at Jerry Spence's college, which you can do your own research, but it's utilizing psychodrama, utilizing being able to reverse roles with your audience. So if you're in front of a judge and you're making an argument, before you make that argument, you become the judge. You step into the judge's shoes and the robe and you try to become her and say, okay, what would I need to hear as this judge to rule my way? And you become the judge. Here, I would say, again, know who you're writing, become that person, and then ask yourself, what would that person need to read in order to be interested in me? So it's taking yourself out of the equation, putting it all about the person you're interested in working for, and then answering the question, what would that person want to hear? What would I want to hear if I were him or her? And I think you'll find that's effective way you can get a little bit insight into who you're going to be working for and up your odds at getting the job.
Okay. Let's move on to interviews then. So you've gotten the CV, you've gotten the foot in the door. The cover letter has made someone say, I want to interview this person for this position. I always tell people you got to prepare for the interview, research the firm. You have to, again, look professional, be calm. And I always tell people, look, if you're scared, it's normal. Think of the worst question that you don't want to be asked and prepare an answer for that question. And therefore, you'll be much more relaxed because you'll know, look, even if they ask the worst question that I don't like to answer, I have a prepared answer for that. And that's one thing. Kurt, Van, anything else that you could talk about on the topic of interviews?
I can, Kurt will have a better observation, probably he's done it more, but one of the truths that a person must remember when you're going for an interview, they're not interviewing your body, they're not interviewing anyone else. What they're interviewing is the soul that lives within you. And you are communicating soul to soul with your interviewer. So the first rule that I learned as a young man was when you're speaking to someone in authority or someone that you want to communicate deeply with, you must maintain eye contact. Not a stare down, but let them look into your soul. It's a way to gain trust and also to be persuasive. So I think that's important to maintain this awareness that this person you're communicating with is not just communicating with words. They're communicating with observations and they're speaking to your soul. And so that's important because you can never prepare for everything. They're going to ask you something you're not prepared for. And it's just going to come out of your life experience. It's going to come out of your heart. So if you're open to be vulnerable, as Kurt said, and to be honest and let someone look into your life and to share with them, that's impressive. And you make a contact with a person that way that is really important. So that's something I would have a person remember. It's a way to project personal presence and also to acknowledge that each of us have eccentricities that, you know, we're each odd in a different way, but we're vulnerable, willing to accept that as long as we can communicate honestly and openly. And I think that's important.
And I think to follow up on that, if someone does ask you a question, never avoid the question. So don't avoid eye contact, and also don't avoid a question. You have to come up with some answer. And you know, when I interview, I always add a question that I know no one would have been able to predict. And I don't care what the answer is. I'm just viewing how they react to it and whether they keep their composure and give me some sort of answer. So it's usually some kind of ridiculous question that has nothing to do about the law. But my goal is to see how they handle the pressure and coming up with the response on the fly. Kurt, anything to add on that?
Yeah, there's a guy named Tony Robbins or Anthony Robbins. I'm going to give a plug to because he does seminars on basically physiology, and what he'll teach you is that only about 7% of communication is words. Your physiology, how do you carry yourself? How do you enter a room? How do you build rapport with somebody you're having a hard time building rapport with? Those are really valuable to the interview process because it teaches you that even if you're initially having some struggles creating rapport, tools and techniques that you can use to get to that place where you have some rapport. So the interview, I'd also say it's okay to say, I don't know. I get that we're expected to know everything, but there's not an honest answer is better than bullshit. So if the answer is, you know what, I don't have a clue, but you know what, I'm going to leave here, go look it up. And next time we talk, notice how there was a presumption that there's going to be a next time. I'll have that answer for you. I like that better. And oftentimes you'll get it. Well, I understand that you don't know, but if you did know, what would you say? And you can get some additional insight and be prepared for that as well, because that's just a technique that frankly Tony Robbins talks about, to also try to get gleaned into somebody's inner workings and what's really going on. But confidence, you know, people say be confident and then don't tell you how to be confident. I would say, who's your best friend? Talk to the interviewer the same way you would talk to your best friend. Same tonality, same tone, same beat, same. There shouldn't be any distinction between me watching and you talk with your best friend and me talking with that or you talking with that interview. I think it's a trial technique they teach us too, which is, you know, your tonality shouldn't change when you're up in front of a jury, because then when you do that, that person picks up on that energy of, okay, this person cares about me, is considering my feelings, is considering, you know, and has an assumption that we're getting along. So I would say talk to the interviewer, and I'm not saying you need to be really informal or just, you know, hey, but I'm saying that it should sound exactly like you're talking with your best friend. The way I talked to Dragon ought to be the way I talk to the guy or gal I'm interviewing with.
We have a question from one of our viewers. Can you tolerate grammar faults in a cover letter or during an interview for a non-native English speaker? I don't have a problem with that. In fact, in the cases that I've been involved in, I dare say that I've probably hired a fair number of non-native English speakers, so long as they could communicate in a way that did not hinder us from doing the work we were doing. And I think, you know, in the international realm, you'll see a lot more international people applying. So I don't know if you guys have had that experience of non-native English speakers applying, and if that causes any kind of concerns or how to deal with that, how to, you know, not let that hinder you.
Yeah, there's two languages, English and French, that are typically recognized at the tribunals. So you need to be fluent in one or the other. To me, it comes back to how bad do you want the job? And if that's not one of your very initial languages, or your first language is English or French, then you've got additional challenges. And what you need to do is take your resume to, you know, your buddy who does speak fluent and say, hey, can you proofread this? Because, you know, do I make concessions in a CV for somebody who spells things wrong? No. I mean, because to me, it's a sign that you really don't want it bad enough, or you would make sure that you spelled the word right. So it requires additional work, because if you don't do it, you've got additional challenges, and you're going to have to recognize that this may be harder for me to get this gig than somebody who's fluent, but I'm going to make damn sure I get it by making sure every word's right, by making sure the punctuation's right. Because this is business, man. And if you don't care enough to get it proofread by somebody, it tells me you just don't care enough. I'll make a lot of concessions in the interview for broken English, no problem. But that person's not getting the interview if they don't have the wherewithal to make sure there's correct spelling.
Yeah, I think that's the key, that if you've earned the ticket to the interview with a proper CV and a proper cover letter, then we're much more forgiving and understanding. I mean, for me, English is not my first language. I learned it watching TV, so I'm very attuned to the fact that some people are not that eloquent speaking English, and I had to try hard and had to take courses when I was younger to perfect my English. I don't know how perfect it is now, but accents are always come up into play where people have different accents. I know when I was there in Kansas, people had difficulty with my Illinois accent. We have another question coming in. Can you discuss interview follow-up? Is a thank you via email okay, or does it always have to be handwritten? And how much follow-up to inquire about a hiring decision is too much? So how persistent should you be after an interview to see if you got the position?
I love that question. I don't know. I don't want to talk too much, but the person that's asking that question, I want to say there is no too much. Call me every day, because what you're saying is, hey, I want it better. I want it more than anybody else. So, and if you don't get the job, what have you lost? You know what? You were relentless. You didn't take no for an answer. So, and the email's fine, but I'd rather get a nice little thing I can open. I'm old school. If you get a handwritten thank you note, that's more, it says I care more than another email that you get from everybody else you interviewed. So I'm just that way though. That might annoy somebody else, but heck, they weren't going to hire you anyway. You know, by the fourth time you're saying, listen, I really think you might be making a mistake here because I can add a ton of value to your firm. I'm starting to love that person. So there is no too much. That's
Kurt
my
and I agree on most things, and I agree with him on that. Nobody likes an ingrate, and everyone appreciates someone who expresses appreciation. So a thank you handwritten is one of the most effective ways of conveying gratitude, as well as an impressive effort to actually relay that. So I agree with Kurt. Handwritten note says thank you, appreciated the opportunity, enjoyed the conversation, and hope to be seeing you again. That's important.
For me, I think especially since the perception is that people are sending out hundreds of CVs and doing maybe dozens of interviews, doing the handwritten letter adds sort of a personal touch. It draws in the potential employer to say, hey, this person is not just sending me a Xerox copy of the thank you note they sent to the last interviewer. They're actually personalizing it. They're taking extra time and care to kind of connect with me. And again, it might show a little bit of the inner person, the soul of the person, and it might persuade me. Likewise, if I'm wavering to hire someone or not, and if I'm choosing between two people, if one person is constantly calling me and the other one isn't, I might err on the side of caution and say, well, this person's pretty diligent. I think I want that person rather than the person who took the assignment and disappeared for 2 weeks. So I think that would definitely be okay for interviews. Now, let's see if no questions coming in yet, but a lot of times when I give lectures or in the literature, there's questions about how someone should appear, how you should dress for a law interview. And I'll start it off by saying, I always tell people, look, whatever you wear, make sure it just looks, kind of professional. Make sure you're not going back to what Kurt said, don't have any political stickers or buttons on. And make sure you're comfortable wearing what you're wearing. So I always say, never wear an outfit you've never test rode before, that you've not worn before. Because the worst thing going to happen is you wear this new suit, you sit down, and a button pops off and hits the interviewer in the eye. That's going to that's going to not go well. You're going to be nervous, and I'll tell you, you're not going to feel good about that interview. So that's the advice I usually give. I know other sources will sometimes talk about color arrangements that are more preferred or that are supposed to sway the interviewer. I'm not swayed by what color tie you have or anything like that. And I think, if we're, what kind of skirt or dress you're wearing, what kind of shoes, those are not things I take note of. But again, anything to add?
Van?
I don't think you can you'll ever regret dressing up for an interview. You can always dress down later, but you ought to present your best. And this person knows you take this seriously. And like I said, if you get an informal meeting with someone, you can dress down for that, but use your best.
Yeah. There's a lot of science. And I don't know if I buy it either, but there's a lot of, you know, if I have a client who's in a murder case, he's going to wear pastels. I want you in a light blue shirt. I want you in a yellow. I want you in a white. I want you in a pink. Because psychiatrists say that softens the appearance, and people make judgments based upon appearances. When I first met Dragon, I was judging him immediately. They say don't judge. When I first met Van, I judged him immediately. Every person I've ever met, I've judged immediately based upon what am I seeing. So recognize that you're on trial from the second you shake hands, and dress for it. Yeah.
Going back to researching who you're interviewing with, I've been told by several prosecutors that in their office they had a rule that they had to wear a white shirt if they're male, and a blue tie if they were applying like a dark or medium blue tie. Females had to wear either a blue suit dress or a gray one, avoiding black and avoiding any kind of bright colors. So again, if I were applying for a prosecutor's job, I may want to listen to that. But because again, you look more like the people that are interviewing you, they feel more comfortable with you and they see you fitting in their organization. But again, that's specific to prosecutors, and I don't know why they would pick those colors necessarily. Yeah. We have a question coming in. We actually have two. The first one, what are your suggestions for an older applicant who has diverse experience, but not specifically in the field they're applying for? Say for someone who's recently completed a master's in a specific field of law in their early 30s, after working for a couple of years looking for jobs, would they be considered positively for a job or an internship?
Well, when I heard 32, I thought he was going to say 62. Older. I mean, 32, brother or sister, you're in the prime of your life. So, yes, to answer your question, you're going to be considered, because in my mind, there's nothing old about a 32-year-old. I mean, you're still young and ready to go kick ass. So I would say, ask yourself what your dream is and then chase it, and then don't give up until you've got it.
I agree. And I also would throw in, I went and got a master in laws degree when I was older. I was 32 when I got out. So that kind of hits where I was. And I admire other people that have followed that path, because I know what I was feeling and experiencing then was seeking special qualification to do the kind of work I wanted to do. So if somebody's doing that, I admire it. And even if they're older, like Kurt said, I thought you were going to say in the 50s. I had fellow students who were in their 50s when I got my master's, and these people were developing a focus on what they wanted to do. And I would treat them the same. I think if you're now persuaded what it is you want to work at, and this is it, then hallelujah, I'm going to recognize it.
Okay, I agree. I think I agree with everything that's been said. Age, especially in our profession, I think age is not a factor. I've seen some very vital and impressive attorneys that are young, vital and impressive attorneys that are more mature in age. I think if you've got the drive in you, it doesn't matter what your age is. We have another question from the chat. Is it appropriate to approach the hiring manager if you know them in order to enhance your chances to be shortlisted for the interview?
Van?
I'd say follow your instincts.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, it's about you can have the greatest resume on the planet, but you know, there's an old saying, if you know the law, great, but if you know the judge, better. So if you've got some connection with the person in charge, I think you'd be silly to not foster that. But if it is blatantly obvious, hey, let's go to have dinner, you know, and you're just cheesing the guy up and it's, or the gal up for the gig, you know, I would say use your instincts, but use your instincts wisely. You know, you don't want to be obvious that the only reason you're taking this person to dinner is because you want the job and you're going to, you know, stroke their ego a little bit to get it. But at the same time, if you've got a contact other people don't have, absolutely use it.
Yeah, I think to follow up on that, it would depend on the nature of the prior relationship. I mean, you know, if it's just a casual friend of a friend, I think it's okay to make contact, but don't all of a sudden act like their best friend or, you know, start sending gifts and stuff like that. That I think would be inappropriate. So yeah, I think you got to use your instincts and make a judgment call. A lot of times we have to make leaps of faith and judgment calls in law, and that's one of them. Now, as we enter this era, we're doing this virtually over the internet. Skype interviews are becoming, or Zoom interviews, or Microsoft Teams, or Google Hangouts, or FaceTime, which I think is a thing that Apple users use, are becoming more common. Is there any advice in particular when doing that type of interview that is different from doing an in-person interview?
Don't.
No, was that?
I said, don't. You can see it right now. We're doing it right now. I mean, how hard it's harder to be I mean, if you have the option of an interview in person or an interview over Skype, pay the few $100 or whatever it is to get there. It's detached. It's not as personal. It feels weird. Who do I look at? Do I look at Van? Do I look at Dragon? Do I look into the little camera here? You lose it. I mean, there's a push now to try to do jury trials or trials in front of a Zoom. Don't allow it. We have to, you know, especially when we know that only 7% of communication is words. You know, what's more compelling, going to a play on Broadway or watching the same play over your personal computer? Front way, you're right there. The actors are right in front of you and you're in the theater, or you're watching it over your computer. I mean, come on. So if you're given the option, hey, absolutely, you know what? I'm willing to fly myself there to meet you in person. I'm just going to put you, you know, I don't have any advice for doing it over the internet because I'd fight to not do it that way.
I want to echo that. We have been struggling, as Kurt mentioned, with the question of whether or not we should do jury trials with video. And it is the same as with any personal presence that you have with someone. You can have an effect on someone by your presence that you cannot have over video. And there's actually a connection that people make without speaking at all, by being present, just by being in their presence. And so I agree with Kurt. Make the effort, endure the expense, and try to be personal if at all possible.
And I think that'll show that you're really interested in the job if you're willing to do that rather than just phone it in, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay. Next topic I would like to briefly address. Nowadays, social media content is something we didn't have years ago, at least when I was applying, to worry about that much. But now there's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's LinkedIn, there's, I don't know, TikTok, Snapchat. I don't even know all these things that are out there. And I think whenever you're interviewing now, it's becoming more and more common for the interviewer to do a little bit of research to see what is out there on the internet about you. And so I always caution people, be wary of what you have on your social media. Be wary of your login name if you do a Skype interview, that it's not something that is unprofessional. And, you know, in today's day and age, you posted something 15 years ago, it might still be up there. So try to get it out of there. And I've also had the question of, well, given that people do research social media, is someone at a disadvantage if they don't have a social media presence? And I personally don't think so. And I say that because I've hired multiple people that have consciously avoided having a social media presence because they don't want to have that kind of presence on the internet. And I know at least one of those individuals has been very successful since leaving. Well, technically, I haven't left my employee, but they're now joining a very eminent chambers in the UK, well known for international work, Doughty Street, and they don't have a Facebook. They don't even have a LinkedIn, I don't believe, but they're still able to do the job. So, do you guys have any thoughts on social media? I know, Kurt, you do use social media to advertise somewhat, I've noticed.
Yeah, only because they say you have to. You know, if I had to choose between somebody that's got a bunch of Facebook pages and somebody who says, you know what, I'm not even on it, I'm going with the person who's not even on it, because that means they're working and they're not playing around on their social media. The first thing we do at a jury trial, once we get the jurors' names, is we look them up. What do they have on Facebook? What do they have on Instagram? What do they have on Twitter? And if you're going to do that for a jury, you're certainly that for some you're going to years with, possibly. You're going to know who are they. So that's just part of the due diligence. So you're right. You got to know what's you're putting out there, and you know the content you're putting out. The employers are going to look at it. I hate social media. Am I on it? Oh, I'm on it all over the place. I pay my daughter a few $100 a month to pretend she's me. So yeah, I'm on it, but I'm only on it because they say you got to be on it. I think it's I don't like it. I'll put it that way.
I'll say in addition that it can be a distraction. And how many times have we heard lately where a employee of either law firm or bank or public relations firm has a social media post discovered that reveals a bias or prejudice or insensitivity, and it sinks their career. So I think if you're on it, just be careful, but I agree with Kurt, it's not necessary. I'm on it just so I can see Kurt, but
yeah, right.
That's about all I do.
Right.
So yeah, I just say be careful and use it with great discretion.
Any other topics that come up for interviews that I've missed or forgotten about that you guys would like to raise before we open up for question and answer to the person still with us?
I'm looking at the itinerary.
It's a roadmap, not an itinerary.
There you go. You know what? The ADC will review your CV. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, that's something that actually, well, I can do that now. One moment. Now I got to figure out how to share the.
We'll put Dom on and let Dom do it. I can't even see Dom when I see his name.
Yeah, Dom is hidden. Hang on, let me share screen.
I'm here, but you need to do it, Danny.
Yeah, I thought so. Hold on. Share screen. Let's do this. Can everybody see this now?
Yep.
No,
Nope.
I don't think so.
Okay, let me try it a different way.
It was up there.
Oh, it was? Okay, well, let me try it a different way. So in essence, I'll just read it, I guess. If you would like to submit your CV for personalized review and comments from an ADC-ICT practitioner, please contact D. Kennedy at icty.org. And for non-members, the fee is 15 euros, but you will get a personalized review and comments. We might do a Skype or Zoom or or either send an email and do an email exchange. It's free for ADC-ICT members. So yet another benefit of membership, but this is a way to get a professional review of your CV and get some tips of how to make your CV look better. Some of the topics we've talked about and some that we don't have time to talk about, but that we do know about from having read all the literature. And I've read literally books and mountains of articles on the topic. So that is of great benefit if people are interested, but that's something after this lecture. So now we can move to questions and answers. Hang on if I can, I think I'm back. And I thought I saw a question on the screen, but now I got to go back to the questions screen. I would love to hear what advice you would give to your younger job searching selves. They're referring to the three of us, I think.
No's are a gift. You know, but you're going to have 100 no's if you're doing it right. And they tend to discourage you. Oh, everybody, you know, especially as my younger self was a pale skinned, flaming red hair, pasty white skin, sunburned all the time fella that the girls wouldn't even talk to. So I'm not good enough. I'm not attractive enough. And damn it, I'm just not smart enough. That's the negative self-talk going in. So what I would say to the younger Kurt is that you are good enough, you're smart enough, and no's are a gift because you can use the no's to defeat you, or you can use the no's as fire and gas on a fire. Okay, you tell me no, watch me. I'm going to go get it done. And you're going to wish you would have said yes. So get depressed when you got 10,000 no's. Then you can. Until then, keep going. That'd be what I'd say.
One thing that rejection does as well is it does increase your appreciation when you land that spot. And I think you have a greater tendency to display your appreciation. I know when I went through it, I finally landed, but I'm going to give these guys everything I got. And I did. But I wish that we all had the luxury of having hindsight, having lived the experiences that we've had, and we don't. So what you have to do is exercise some faith. And sometimes faith is indistinguishable from foolishness without the benefit of hindsight, but you just have to push and live and be willing to make a mistake, because if you're not, you'll never grow. So those are things you learn by experience, but you have to be willing.
I think the advice that I would give, not just to myself, but to actually people that are applying and looking for positions, you know, the pathway to your dreams is not always how you envision it. You can't pre-plan the route and have a roadmap of how you're going to get to be where you're successful or where you want to be. You have to kind of take what life gives you, make the most of it, and use each stepping stone to get experience, get a reputation, a good reputation, and to then move on to something else. You know, people that know me know this. When I was hired specifically as a part-time employee at a law firm until I got a full-time job elsewhere. And it was specifically to do all the domestic work while my boss was working at the ICTY. So I was hired with the explicit information that I would not be working on international cases and that I would be only a part-time employee until I got a job elsewhere. Well, pretty soon, I forget how many weeks in, I became a full-time associate at that firm, was handling, you know, we had 300 cases in court from one client a year. And I had multiple other clients in practice areas. So I was in court every day. And then lo and behold, a couple of years later, I started helping out on some of the international cases. And then at one point in time, I believe it was 2002, I became the youngest defense counsel at the ICTY on a case as counsel. Now, I'm not that young anymore, but my career path could not have been envisioned by the younger me that graduated law school. So I had to make the most of what opportunities presented themselves and kind of go with the flow. And I think that's the key. We have another question coming in. There's a tendency today to say, focus more on your network relationship than on a CV or cover letter. What do you think about that idea? Are you more open to a person you know or to a good CV?
The sad reality is that it's who you know. It's who you know. I mean, that's the truth. So I would say if I had to put one in front of the other, it's kind of like what I said before. You can know the law or know the judge. Always better to know the judge. So it doesn't hurt to know the law. But in my mind, it's especially this narrow area of law. You know, how did I get it? I took Jelko Parr out to dinner for 25 times and annoyed him to death. I mean, it's creating the network. So the network in my mind is huge. Why did I hire Dragon on my last case? Because I knew he was a badass. You know, why did I want to become partners with Van? Same answer. So yeah, I would say do the right thing, have a great CV, but if you can expand your network, and LinkedIn is not the way to do it. Social media, it's getting there. Where do you want to work? Go there, meet people, hang out. You can afford a vacation every year, and maybe you can't when you can go there cheap. Find a way to get it done. Borrow the money from mom and dad if you have to, but get there. And then start meeting people that are there. And then if you have to, hey, I'll work a week for nothing. Just let me show you what I got. But in my mind, the network is going to win out every time.
Absolutely. And you remember, you're sending these CVs to people you don't usually know. If you have a network of people that you know, you're going to be talking to them. And you know, the CV is helpful, but it's not the key. When somebody knows who you are, knows about you, Kurt said, that's the start of their confidence that you could help them or work with them. It's really important. Make friendships.
Yeah, and I think it's a key when, as Kurt mentioned, in niche practice areas, who you know and who you've worked for. So if a name stands out, I can give two stories. One, personally, when I was interviewing when I was in law school, someone noticed by my name that I'm of Serbian descent, and they said, "Hey, do you know John Stojic? He's a Serbian-American attorney who's doing work in the international field. You should get to know him." And essentially, that was my first job. So I was interviewing with another firm. That attorney, based upon my name, said, "Hey, you should get in touch with John Stojic." And here I am now. I'm Kurt, you know John. Van, I don't think you've met him, but that was my start in this. And then also, I've had other experiences where people that have worked for me as an intern or legal assistant are being considered by others in the international arena, the international law arena. And, you know, they will just call and say, "Hey, so-and-so is applying for a position. What do you think? Yes or no?" And so I think a lot of that goes on where references, personal vouch, you know, I vouch for this person as being a hard worker, goes a long way. You know, it personalizes you more than anything on paper can. So yeah, that's what I would say on that. Okay, do we have any other questions that we have not covered that you would like to ask on these topics? Please do. We still have some time available. Bob, am I getting all the questions on this little window or?
Hey, you've got all the questions.
Okay. Well, we've got a lot of thanks for the time. So last call, any other questions that anyone has for all of us or any of us individually? Waiting for time delay. Okay, I guess then that is it. Well, I would thank, first of all, Kurt and Van for getting up early in the morning to accommodate us. And I'd like to thank everyone for their interest in this webinar and for participating. And I wish everyone good luck in their endeavors.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
Yep. Take care. Good luck. Go get them.
Okay. Thank you all. This concludes the webinar, and it'll be on YouTube if you missed portions of it, so you can watch it back. Okay.
Kurt and Dragon, I'll be in touch.
Okay, guys.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
Thanks,
Dom,
good to see you, Dom.
I think you're in charge of ending it, aren't you?
Is